The scrap-scarred bronze gates were forced open by a heavy leather boot. The rusted hinges groaned from the movement as they flung back. A troop of women took the lead. The door's kicker, the clear leader, adjusted her grips on her legendary sword, Sunder, and her trusty axe. With a slow drag of her tongue, she licked a bit of blood pooling from her burst lip as she trudged onwards along the cobble floors of the beaten fortress. Behind the Breaker of Wills walked a hulking, scarred monstrosity. A great black-furred jackal dragged herself forwards, bloody in large claws digging into the stone as she stalked behind her master. On either side of the beast were two mages, a sorceress of life, wizened by age, and the Paragon of Bards herself, young but more powerful than even she knew. Trailing behind the four, limping and fatigued, were two men. An elderly mage standing tall and proud, dripping with the gore of battle, and a battle-axe-wielding warrior with hate in his eyes. The hero of the heated scar at the front of the group twirled her axe in her hand, some ichor falling from the blade to land beneath her leather boots as she approached the throne room with her entourage. To her, the lack of warriors by the gates meant the Gold Caste had either run out of soldiers, or they had all pulled back to defend their regent. Taking a deep breath in, she reached behind herself to adjust her messy bun with her sword arm. "They make them no fear," she said with the chill of a jaded pit fighter. "Got it." The Paragon nodded, tapping her throat in preparation as she fanned out to the right. "Misha, stay low. Go for the neck on my signal." The Lady of the Sands continued. "Like Melody plan. Good. Talk less. Talk fast. Let Misha rend." The awakened beast licked her teeth as she fell a bit behind, moving low and ready to charge. "And what would you have me do?" The sorceress thumped her staff on the cobblestone with a battle-bruised smirk. "What you do best, Cho." Melody gave her a knowing nod. "And you two. Let me do the fucking talking. Please." She cast a glare back to the two men. The old man grinned his bloody grin, his thick white beard stained with the gore of those who weren't afraid to be immolated. "Oh, of course, good magistrate. I shall stay as silent as death itself." Decayed River's staff ignited into flames as he gave an exaggerated bow. "So long as I get his head," Parados interjected, gripping his axe tighter. The winds began to stir within the building, the arcane storm outside seeping in as Vey began to work her magic, her heavenly voice singing a solemn note of suspense and horror that resounded throughout the entire fortress. The echoes of the Magistrate's footfalls turned to thundering booms as she marched towards the throne room, emerging into the light that shone from the broken skylight. Raising Sunder, she pointed it directly at the Regent of the once great city of gold. "Helios," she declared. "None of your men had to die today. None of them had to suffer. None of Gold's people had to suffer. To end the Gale of Ash, all that was required was your head. Now is the time to cease being a coward and submit yourself for the good of your people. For the good of all of Honoran." The Regent's guards cast uncertain glances to each other with unreadable expressions. The Regent himself drew his sword, glaring back at the invaders. "My bloodline will never bow to the will of your baron, you godless lapdog. The people of Gold will never surrender to you or any of your adamantine-dwelling whoresons. This is your last chance, Magistrate, to recall your forces before I tie you to the back of a chariot and drag you across the sand from here to Bronze. Or, if I may interject so rudely." Decayed River sauntered into the light. "We are all people of Honoran, are we not? Ever heard of the phrase, if you can't beat them, join them? My master, Nern, would be more than happy to accept your surrender. You'd even get to keep your life. And your city. How sweet is that deal, Parados turned his head to the blood mage, yanking him over as he spoke in a barely contained, enraged whisper. You said we were to ensure his death. You lied to me. He bared his teeth at the mage. I did nothing of the sort. Nern doesn't want this little whirlwind broken just yet. So he's to remain alive. For now. River smirked back at his glaring companion, gesturing to the howling arcane gale above. Ignoring the two behind her, Melody turned her blade ever so slightly. I will break this curse, Helios. Don't throw your men's lives away over stubborn pride. She looked into his eyes, pleading with him with her gaze as her voice softened for only a moment. This gale must end. For your people. We have survived a year of this siege, and we will endure 100 more if we must. The Regent sneered back. Then, as a Magistrate of Dran, Paragon of Law, I sentence you to death for violation of the Alliance of the Scar, allowing the Sands to rampage your territories, murder, treason, negligence, incompetence, and cowardice. Melody broke form immediately, swinging Sunder up and slashing it down into the ground as a wave of lightning arced out along the path of the swing, striking directly into the Regent's chest. He seized up, beginning to spasm and convulse with pain as arcane electricity ravaged his body. In that same moment, Misha charged from the shadows. She pounced over the back of the crouched magistrate, leaping towards the nearest guard and going for their throat, ripping them apart with her jaws. Vay's haunting song of despair rose into a piercing shriek of horror as the remaining Gold Caste warriors gripped their heads, their minds assaulted with agony and fear. While knelt down, Melody pounded her axe-wielding fist into the ground, suddenly summoning a column of rock upwards beneath the awaiting feet of Sho, and launching her into the air as her staff throbbed with arcane energy. A wave of intangible light passed out from her as she hung in the air. As the wave passed over her allies, their wounds seemed to fade, sewing themselves shut and staunching their bleeding. However, as it passed over the remaining Gold Caste, they found themselves drained of energy, their body temperature falling rapidly as they were sapped of their very life force. A second pulse shot out of her, then a third, and on the fourth pulse, the last of the warriors fell to the ground. Decayed River frowned at his own lack of involvement in the bloodshed. Parados merely watched Helios. The Regent dropped to his knees as the sieges stopped, sapped of strength and utterly defeated. Consider yourself added to my bloody tally. The list is quite long, but I'll make some room for you. The magistrate sheathed Sunder, but kept her axe out. You won't lay another hand on him! A new voice shouted. From a newly flung open door, a woman charged forward, sword in hand. She rushed to the side of the Regent and held the blade aloft, staring down the breaker of wills. Melody and Decayed River were at a loss, lowering their weapons for a moment as they came face to face with the woman they had seen die months prior. Scylla, no, I won't lose you too. The Regent weakly placed a hand on hers. With a cruel grin, Decayed River began to laugh, cackling at the madness of it all. What an exciting turn of events! Helios, my boy, you didn't tell me you'd taken up necromancy? He took a step closer. Scylla? How is this possible? You were taken by the sand. Your brothers and sisters saw you get dragged beneath. Your father was prepared to brave the scar alone to search it for you. And yet, here you are. And you stand with the Coward of Gold? Melody watched the woman's eyes for any kind of magic altering her mind. The magistrate didn't need to hear her response. Those questions melted away as she could see something far more confusing in the woman's eyes. Scylla's eyes burned with the passion of love. They found me. While my father and the Bronze Bastion prepared, they acted. They carried my broken body out of the scar. They opened my eyes to the lies of the Bastion, my father, and the Baron's tyranny. I am one of the Gold Caste, and I will die among my brothers. She settled into a stance from her bastion training. I extend a hand again, my dear. Nern, and I'm sure the good magistrate, are more than happy to allow you to return home alive. Decayed River bowed, only to have spit land atop his balding head. Nern can go drink the Baron's piss. I'm not leaving this fortress. This is my home now, and I will defend it. Scylla bared her teeth. Pinching the bridge of her nose, Melody raised her axe hand, moving it back to gesture for her companions to give her some room. Nern might like some fight in their prey, but I don't. Just stand down, Scylla. She sighed. As the group moved back, Vey voiced her concern to her companion, freely as always. Pray! Don't speak like Nern, Magistrate. It's a bad colour on you. She narrowed her eyes. The Magistrate met Vey's gaze, seeing her point, but nonetheless giving her a look that reminded her that now was not the time nor the place to undercut her authority. As they were given room, Melody straightened up and rolled her shoulders, letting out a breath of annoyance as she made her second judgment in the last 10 minutes. As a Magistrate of Dran, Paragon of Law, I sentence you to a trial by combat, for dereliction of duty, desertion, treason, and slander of the Baron. The hero of the heated scar redrew Sunderer into her main hand as she took up a stance opposite Scylla. Just me and you. If you survive, the Baron's forces will withdraw. A fair and just ruling for a lapdog of the judge. Scylla frowned, unimpressed by the act of compassion. Master wishes prize. Must reaffirm strength to pack. Kill quick, kill fast, kill hard. The awakened animal bared her teeth in excitement. The group formed a wide circle around the two women and the Regent, all going silent save for the whipping winds that pounded the fortress non-stop for the last year. The first to move was Scylla, going for an overhead slash down Melody's centre. The Magistrate dodged to the side and swung Sunder down on the sword to keep its blade pinned to the floor. At the same time, she attempted to swing her axe across herself to strike at the woman's back, but Scylla raised her free arm in time to grab the handle of the axe and keep it there. Acting quickly, Melody thrusted her head forward, crashing it against Scylla's to break the two free of their sudden stalemate. In response, the daughter of Commander Balin quickly swung her sword across, slashing Melody along her unprotected stomach. The Magistrate staggered back, grunting in pain as she brought her axe hand to her gut to grip the wound. Taking in a deep breath, she kept her eyes on her opponent. It wasn't as bad as it seemed. She had taken worse hits in the fight pits. Scylla attempted to follow up on her attack with an overconfident overhead swing, gripping the blade with both hands to strike with all of her power. Melody swung Sunder in response, throwing her arm across herself to strike the sword off its course. As the metal clashed together, Melody closed the distance between herself and her target, pulling her arm back to elbow the woman in the face, before whipping her arm to the side. Sunder took off Scylla's head in one clean swipe. Her body fell to the floor, bleeding across the scarred stone. Panting, and turning her attention to her wound, Melody staggered over to show for the sorceress's healing. Parados, act as my executioner, would you? The Magistrate gave the man a weak wave as she stabbed Sunder into the stone to steady herself. With pleasure, Magistrate. The former Gold Caste stepped over the corpse of Scylla. Parados marched towards Helios, the Regent beginning to cry for his lost love. He went to speak some final words, but the executioner's axe found the man's skull first. One heavy, overhead swing cleaved it in two, and brought the Regent of Gold's bloodline to an end. Or so it was thought. This is the last I got in me, Mel. Be more careful for a while. Sho whispered with a frown as she went to work, her arcane energy sapped after the long battle. As Sho's healing light faded, Melody stood upright. The group all looked to the walls, listening. The winds, they still whip. The curse is unbroken, the beast proclaimed. That is impossible. Parados looked to the corpse at his feet in disbelief. The Gale of Ash shall come to an end when the bloodline of the Regent of Gold comes to an end. That was the Baron's exact wording. The curse should be lifted instantly. The Breaker of Wills seemed at a loss for a moment. "Search the fortress! This one may have been a distraction." The group broke off, moving to search for either the real Regent or someone else who fit the bill. A brother, an uncle, a father, something. Anything. After a few short minutes, a shout rang out from the Paragon of Bards. The group rushed to her position to find her standing in a doorway, despair in her eyes. Melody approached, taking a cautious look at her companion. "What's the matter, Faye?" she asked, expecting some sort of arcane trap. "Melody... look." Faye's voice was stunted, broken, pleading. She was speaking to Melody, her friend, not Melody the Magistrate. The Magistrate stood next to the Paragon to look into the room, her tension replacing itself with dread. Within the room were comfortable furnishings, the makings of a nursery, and within it, a cot looking freshly made. Melody's eyes widened as the sleeping baby within awoke and began to cry. With no one else found in the fortress, the Breaker of Wills dropped her weapons, the steel clattering to the floor. She stared ahead blankly as the weight of judgment fell upon her shoulders once more. Shit.